is a school practitioner and professional learning leader in global, national, and regional levels. She specializes in global citizenship and global competence education, including related topics such as intercultural understanding and languages education. She has run national and international networks of schools with educators working on pedagogical change and school improvement. She feels passionately about the way education shapes society and how we can truly engage the next generation to achieve their maximum potential through through it and build a better future tomorrow. Please welcome Lottie Dowling.
Here we go. I think my microphone is finally working. All right, let's try that again. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Lottie Dowling. It's great to be here. Thank you, ICTE, for having me and extending the invitation. Hello, it's great to see Alan in the audience. Please pop a hello in the chat. I am going to ask some questions as we go through, and I would love your feedback as well as we're going. At the end, we're going to have some Q&As and just some chats about this topic, which is about empowering young people to take action. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that I am joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Eastern Kulin Nations. That's our Indigenous Australian people here, and the lands that I join you on are unceded. Okay, so like many of the lands that we are joining from in different parts of the world, they have belonged to Indigenous people and been unceded. It's really important for us to acknowledge that if we are thinking about global citizenship, inclusivity, cultural diversity, all those amazing empathy, respect, and understanding, and all of those things that come under that big, beautiful umbrella of global citizenship. So, welcome. I'm going to share my screen with you now. I would love if you are here in the chat, say hello and tell me, what does social justice mean to you? What does social justice mean to you? All right, so pop your answer in the chat. I'm going to share my screen. Tell me what you're thinking about when you think of social justice. And we'll do a little bit of sharing as we go through. I'll read out the answers as they pop up. As I said, my name is Lottie. I'm from Meg Languages. We do a lot of work in the intercultural education space, including online language learning and cultural lessons, including virtual reality. And of course, I am a Kiwi because I started off with kia ora, which, I noticed actually there's a little typo there. But anyway, kia ora. I have lived and worked all over the world. I lived and worked in China for 10 years at international schools. I have been lucky enough to travel around the world, and welcome, John Gray. A lot of my work has been in primary school education. I do now work across both sectors. I work across primary and secondary schools, and the work that I'm going to be sharing today on this very, very important topic is around the work I've been doing in both primary and secondary schools. So wherever you are joining from, whichever sector you work in, I'm sure there will be relevance to you. So thank you, Danielle. You've said social justice for me is everybody has equal political and social rights and opportunities. Fantastic. Ellen says social justice is justice and fairness for everyone in regard to social issues, especially for groups that have been marginalized. Really great point, Ellen, because when we think about diversity and inclusion, who does the inclusion include? I mean, that in itself is just such a big topic. We've got opportunities, resources, agency, love that word, privileges according to equitability. also recognizing historical injustices. And thank you, Alison, for joining as well from the world's largest lesson. Fantastic. I love your resources. I use them with all the schools, and I'll be showing that today. Social justice means ensuring equal access and opportunity to everyone. If you have a phone, feel free to beat this QR code. It will give you a sign-up page to access this 5-hour self-paced course for free. And I'll show it again at the end of the session. So this session is called Supporting Student Action for Social and Environmental Justice in Schools. And when we talk about this means so many different things, but I'm going to really break it down into what language I use when I'm working in primary schools and in secondary schools. So first of all, we're talking about taking action for environmental justice or social justice. And because I'm working in primary schools, I use really simple language. So we're talking about nature, or we're talking about people. And of course, we have to dig into what does that word mean. Before we can equip young people with the skills to start to take justice and understand justice, they need to understand what these kind of terms mean, right? So there's a lot going on at the world with COP28. When we're talking about environmental justice, nature, there's a lot happening in the world. We've got climate change, we've got biodiversity loss, we've got pandemics, we've got widening social inequalities, and this is all impacting our world. Now, we know as adults this is impacting our world, but young people are very aware of this. Okay, so I've pulled this data from an organization here in Australia, but a very quick search on the internet can bring up a whole lot of data about climate anxiety in young people anywhere on the planet, wherever you are living. So this poll showed us it's an organization for mental health for young people here in Australia. 3 out of 4 young Australians are concerned about climate change. That is huge. 2/3 of young Australians said climate concerns are having a negative impact on youth mental health. And 56 report increased concerns in the last year. Okay, so that is like doubling in a year. Government inaction was the most frequently identified factor impacting youth mental health. Now, I'm not going to go into social justice in any great detail, but because, of course, that has a whole lot of information underneath it. But I just wanted to kind of break down climate justice because that's something that's really hot at the moment with COP26. One of the first things that I do when I'm working with young people is I think it's really important that they see modeled for them young change makers. Okay, you can't be what you can't see. We know this. And I tend not to use the big, very famous examples like Greta Thunberg or Malala, mainly because I think they get their work is absolutely amazing and very important, but I think they get a lot of airtime. And I think there's a lot of young people out there doing a lot of amazing work, that it's important that we show that it's not just a few people, a few young people doing this work. It is thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And there's not just individuals doing this work. There are whole networks. I'll put a few links in the chat in a moment. Whole networks such as Youth by Youth, Youthtopia that Malatai and Isabel, the sisters that are set up Bye Bye Plastic Bags in Bali, which you can see at the bottom here. They then went on and formed Youthtopia. I'm just going to pop that link into the chat. If you don't know it, please check it out. We've also got things like Earth Guardians. If you know Earth Guardians, these are whole networks, not individuals working on social and environment justice. And these are not adults leading this work. These are young people leading this work. So check out some of these organizations. Okay, this is one of my favorite examples over here on the left. This little girl on the left, whoopla, is a little girl called Rosie. Rosie is from Tasmania in Australia. And Rosie was walking home one day and she said to her mum, "Hey mum, who is the person behind the naming of our street?" So her mum said, "Well, let's go home and look it up." And Rosie found out that the person was a settler. They had unfortunately treated the Indigenous people badly. And she said, "Well, do they really deserve to have a street named after them? I don't think so." So she wrote to the council. She was 7 years old. She wrote to the council with her mum's help. And she said, "Did you know that the street is named after this person, and this is what they did. And I would like you to change the name of my street. Unfortunately, the council didn't change the name. And the reason they didn't change the name was because they said, well, it will set a precedent and we will, I mean, this is an absolutely horrible fact. We will have to rename potentially a lot of street names because of some of the historical injustices that some of these people's names have been named after with the streets. So it was disappointing for Rosie. But what is really amazing is that she took action on something that was in her everyday. It was right in front of her. And she did something really simple. She just wrote a letter. Okay. So I always start my sessions. I work with big groups of schools. We all come together on Zoom with examples of young people. And I'd love to know in the chat, if you're here, please share who are some examples of young people that you know that are inspiring, doing inspiring work. And I'll read their names out as they pop up in the chat. Molly Steer is another one at the top. Molly started Straw No More. It is a national organization where she was just walking along the beach one day. She saw straws on the beach and she was like, well, what would the world look like if there were less straws? So, there you go. So we always start off with examples of what young people are doing already, so that these young people can actually see this is not for other people. This is something I can easily do. This kind of work is active participation. So it's students as active learners working on real issues that they care about. And just like if we go back to Molly, who walked along the beach, the girls, Malachi and Isabel, who saw the plastic bags on the beaches that they swam in. Yes, and Malachi gets used because she, started at 12 and she's still doing this work. And Molly started at 11 and is still doing this work as well, which is a few years ago now, which is amazing. Rosie was just walking home and saw something. So it's really important that this work is something they care about, but it's something in their world, so it's relevant. We know that if students don't see the relevance of their learning, they're not going to care enough to be engaged and motivated. So it's really important with social and environmental issues, even if it's a really important issue to the teacher or to the community. If that student doesn't have a connection to it somehow, they're going to find it hard to take action on it because they want to take action on things that they see the relevance in. And that's why personalized learning is so important, really digging into that. What I'm going to show you today comes from, I've actually just finished up a whole year of 35 plus schools, a program where we met 9 or 10 times on Zoom across the year. We went through all the stages I'm going to show you, and I helped scaffold and facilitate their learning around social and environmental issues. Now, have a look at this. These are the project topics that the students chose to focus on. They chose the topics, they chose what to focus on, and they chose how they were going to focus on it. It was completely student driven. And what is really interesting here, sustainability, by far the biggest, and inclusivity, the next biggest. Okay. And inclusivity was really mixed. We had a school doing neurodiversity. They were actually a neurodiverse special school. We had gender diversity and inclusion. We had cultural diversity and inclusion. And sustainability, we had plastic waste, e-waste, we had food waste, we had nude food lunch boxes. So even within these, there were lots. But what's so interesting is that even though there were a couple of schools that did global partnerships and all of them focused on community connections, sustainability, social and environmental justice were kind of those core topics that the students wanted to take action on. Okay. Well-being as well, mental health. 4 out of 5 schools chose mental health instead of physical health, and that's primary schools as well. So young people are very aware of the challenges that young people are facing from primary school upwards. Okay, so one of the things that we do is in our program is we do pre, mid, and post program surveys. And one of the big things that we see with young people is a change in the psychology of their identity, becoming a change maker. So So one of the outcomes in the mid-year surveys that young people told us was, I now see myself as a change maker. I now understand that I can do this work. I now know it is doable because I've seen those examples of young people, and I'm seeing my friends, that I'm connecting with on Zoom, because this program, they connected with schools in other places. This is something I can do. And that is huge. That empowerment is such a big piece. So that's why I always say, when you start this work around social and environmental justice, start with the education piece around change making, and look at those amazing young people and look at what projects they're working on, and talk to your young people about what they care about. Okay. I use design thinking as a framework. I think it's a really strong framework for change making. We start off with the emphasizing. We turn that into a question. I'll talk about some of these stages in a bit more detail. We do an ideation phase, a prototype phase. Then they implement their project. So that's the produce stage. And then they make it better as they iterate, and they do it the next year or the next term or whatever that next cycle is. So I'm going to show a video, and I would love you to share in the chat. What did you see in the video? What did you like in the video? And maybe any questions that you have. So I'm going to put that in the chat. What did you see? What did you like? And any questions that you have. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to share a video from an Australian school who decided to tackle cultural inclusion. So here we go. So this is Mernda Primary School. Okay, I'm going to press play. Mernda Primary School are in the north of Melbourne. They've been on our program for 2 years. This was the program from last year, and they realised that they had over 50 cultures in their school, and they decided to take action on making their school a more inclusive community. All right, let's go.
Students had a big idea to do a podcast, and that was really their end goal. They wanted to do something with ICTE at that level and looking at interviewing students at our school. We did a lot of discussion about different cultures at our school. We threw around a few different ideas, but ultimately they went back to, we'd really love to podcast to interview different students, to find out about all the different backgrounds at our school and to spread awareness about that so people can be more aware of people's beliefs and different customs and traditions and things that are celebrated in our school that we might not talk about more regularly or might not get noticed as much as maybe some others previously.
It was a good opportunity to learn leadership skills and to learn different things too. So
as I already said, just to learn leadership skills and just be a representative of our school, and I also wanted to learn more about different people's cultures and their way of living.
Look into intercultural studies in our schools, that really got built on in the program, which was really nice to see. Looking at things like sustainable development goals and even just having an awareness of what that is in the program itself.
For me, it was probably doing the Zoom meetings and talking to other students from different schools about their ideas. Start little, go big.
Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen there, and I'm going to show one other very short video that is on an environmental project. Again, it's just 1 minute long. This is a Catholic primary school in Sydney. Again, they've actually been on our program for 2 years, but they decided to tackle waste as part of their program to make their school environment. They had a lot of concrete in their school, and they wanted to combat climate change. They wanted to green the environment. They wanted to connect the community to nature a little bit better, and help the students understand nature more. So this is the project that they came up with. All right. Let me just make sure I've got the right one. Here we go. So feel free as you're watching both of these videos to think about, what are you seeing? What are you liking? What questions is it raising?
To be a global citizen means to be a change maker. Try to make an impact in an issue that's happening not just around you, but maybe the whole world.
We were thinking about what our school needed to improve on, and then we ended up on expanding our green space and getting less waste.
So we achieved our goals by building awareness. We decided to build some garden beds for the environment, trying to make it more sustainable. We even built an air garden, which is an aeroponic garden. We conducted a whole school waste audit, found out we had a lot of waste, so we partnered up with Victoria from CSIRO to try and build some more sustainable practices within our school. Bunnings also helped us build some garden bins. We also built a worm farm compost bin to help with the too much waste problem.
My favourite thing to do was definitely walk around the classrooms and educate the students about our plans, what we're planning to do with the students.
So after a period of time, they started collaborating really well together. So I think the skills that came out over the course of the project were definitely their collaboration skills, being able to share ideas, bounce ideas off each other, talk about the different ideas, and then come to a conclusion together.
Global citizenship!
All right. Just so everybody knows too, start little, grow big is a phrase that one of the young change makers on our program last year came up with, and we love it so much, so we use it at the end of some of our videos. So what did you see? What did you like? Have you got any questions? And I'm going to sort of dig in a little bit to some of the things that you saw in there around the process a little bit more. So just do a little screen share. Yes, thanks, Alison. Alison says, love that you encourage students to think about the skills that they're gathering. And in the mid and the end of year surveys, we actually ask them to think about the skills that they've identified, that they've developed. And so we get this beautiful reflection. And as we know, this kind of learning is so rich, right? It's so, so rich. I'm just going to skip through the slide, sorry. It's going back to the beginning. So yeah, it's really great that the young people are thinking about, I've grown so much. And when they look back across that whole year, communication, collaboration, I'll talk about some of those skills a little bit more a bit further on, but they talk about what they have developed and how they've seen themselves grow as leaders, because the way that this program runs is we work with a group of a few students from each school, and they work as leaders in their school, and then some of them go back and they have a bigger group that they work with, and others just work across the whole school. So it's sort of distributed leadership, inclusive leadership. So we've talked about choosing an issue. So we always start with, what do they see around them? What do you care about? Of course, student voice, student agency, so important in this. But somebody brought up a really good point in a presentation I did last week with the What School Could Be community, which was sometimes teachers don't have the luxury of having so much freedom just to let students to choose whatever they can focus on. So if you've got a club that works really well, maybe what you need to do is say, hey, we're going to embed this change making project into our marine life unit. So that is controlled. And then within that, they choose what they're going to tackle and how they're going to tackle it. So there's lots of levels, I think, of student voice and student agency. And if you have limitations as an educator, just work with your limitations. We know as educators, I worked in schools for many years, we know how to work with limitations, educators. We're flexible, we're dynamic, we can do anything. So yes, make sure that there is some level of students choosing, ideally as much choice as you can embed into that learning experience. Yes, thanks, Alan. We always ask young people too, what do they think a global citizen is, right? What do they think student leadership is? What do they think student voice is? What do they think student agency is? And in that video, Ksenia, the young girl, said, it's about change making. And I think that we're starting to see a shift in global citizenship education in general, which is that it has been for a long time about learning about the world. And we're starting to see this big upskill and understanding in schools about young people being active learners, and that That fourth dimension, if we're talking about PISA global competence, about taking action for social and environmental justice for others as well. Thank you so much for popping those comments in there. Please keep them coming. Super awesome just to see them as I'm going through. I talk about this in terms of the Goldilocks factor. We don't want the topic to be too big or too small. That's so important. If it's too big, they get lost in it. And I hear this from schools all the time, right? Like the topic becomes too big, the students don't know where to go. But then if it's too small, it's not exciting. It's not a challenge. So we want that role of the educator, I'll talk a bit more about soon, to be scaffolding learning, to push students and challenge them so they are at the edge of their learning curve, but they are not overwhelmed and lost in that learning. It's really important. Little old Goldilocks, hey? This is a slide from an amazing organization called Inspired Citizens that do amazing work. Steve Sostek, who's no longer with us, was a big inspiration to me, and just really want to acknowledge him and his work, and the team at Inspired Citizens. And what they talk about is what they call heart mapping. So not just thinking about the challenges in the world, the problems, the climate change, the social justice issues, Black Lives Matter issues, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but what do you care about? What are you good at? And how can that drive your project so it's meaningful for you and you are successful with your project? I'm just going to read out a couple of comments here. We've got saw they're working toward the SDGs and intentionally taking action and wanting to learn. Yes, they're interacting with other cultures, explore the differences and celebrate them. Leadership, following the dialogue. Yes, awesome. We've got some great comments. Read the comments in the chat too if you've got a moment. So, as I said earlier, the big shift for young people saying, hey, I can take action. And when I finish up my programs with young people, I always say, hey, we finished a year of learning and I might not see you again, but this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. You now have an amazing tool belt full of tools. So when you're walking down the road and you see something happening at a bus stop that you don't like and you don't believe is right or just, you know a way to take action. You feel confident taking action. You don't just feel scared and lost and unsure and disempowered. You have those tools, and I am sure that all the amazing work that all of you here are doing with your schools with young people and all the students that I have worked with, I'm sure in the future they're going to do amazing things because they've come away with this mindset that change making is totally possible and they've got those skills to do it. We always turn topics into questions. That's really important. It activates, inquiry-based learning. It really activates the curiosity. And if we just have a topic like sustainability or plastic waste in our school, well, what are we trying to achieve, right? But if we turn that into a question, like what would a school be like where everybody truly feels they belong? How can we make our school more inclusive of cultural and linguistic diversity? What would it take to stop the tawny frogmouth Australian creature from being endangered? Okay, these are all questions that students I've worked with have come up with. So turning into a question, really important. All right, I'm going to show you one more video. This is actually a video from America, and they have done some amazing work in social justice. Actually, sorry, I'm just thinking aloud. I'm going to come back to that in a moment because I want to talk a little bit about root cause identification. So it's really important when students have chosen their topic that they think about what is the root cause of their issue. So when they're designing solutions for social justice, for environmental justice issues, we're not just thinking about that surface. Okay, the example I often use with young people is, hey, there's rubbish coming down the river. A solution you could come up with is stand at the bottom of the river and put nets in. That's going to stop the rubbish going to the sea for sure. But what is going to be more important? What is going to be more effective? Getting in a boat and going up the river and seeing where the rubbish comes in and going to the factory or going to the homes and educating them about why they shouldn't be doing that, about what they could be doing instead, about putting bins in up there, because, you know, if we deal with the issue down here, there's still a whole lot of damage that's happened in between. So first of all, think about root cause analysis, and there's lots and lots of tools that you can use. For this, the 5 whys is one, the fishbone is one, the tree is one. Today I was working with a school here in Australia around cultural and linguistic diversity with a tree, and they were coming up with some fantastic ideas. These are like little grade 5s, you know, so this work is very powerful, and it can be done very early on as well. And then, of course, when we think, okay, we've got to the root cause, we think, look, the reason that there's so much rubbish in our school, or the reason that, you know, there's not people of a certain culture are not feeling comfortable in our school, or there's not mixing of cultures in our school, we can then come up with ideation. And with ideation, coming up with lots of ideas, with design thinking, we talk about divergent thinking, lots and lots and lots of ideas, and convergent thinking, then closing off and choosing a suitable idea. And they need to be done in those order: divergent thinking first, and then we close off and think about what was a suitable solution and how do we choose that suitable solution as well. So let's talk about some of the things that we use when we're working with schools. So community engagement, really, really important, and the role of young people. So students going out to the community and being educators. So today I was reading through some project plans. We had, these are all different schools, students going to a local kindergarten to set up a buddy program to educate young children about friendships. Okay, the kindergarten said, we've got a whole lot of new kids here. Can you come down and do some work with them? Students as educators, one of the primary schools on our program did a video on the SDGs. They put it in the website that they created, and that got shown, that little video got shown at a local high school to educate the high school year 9s about the SDGs as part of a program that the teacher there saw the video and thought, this is really cute. So and relevant and important, and of course all those things too. So we've got students as educators, not just to younger levels but also to older levels. And then we've got educators going, we've got young people going to the staff room and educating staff. Okay, I've had young people go to the staff rooms and talk to staff about why, you know, they need to cut the waste in the school, or why they need to green the space, or why inclusion matters. So we've got young people educating the educators, and that is a big step up for some of our young people, because schools are hierarchical. Schools are, you know, sources of all sorts of scaffolding of power, and the role of the educator and the student is very set. But when students become the educator, it's very, very powerful, and not just for peers, teachers. We also have them educating the community through digital storytelling, making videos, which we'll have a look at soon, making posters with a purpose. Of course, we have students as learners. They've got to learn from the community too. So that's why connecting with the community and having an expert come in and show them about a sub pod, which is a thing you put under the ground and the worms can go through. Some of our schools installed sub pods this year. Sub pod, why is the sub pod useful and important, and have an expert come into the school and educate the young people about that. And then, of course, students as partners, so working together with the community on a project and both bringing to the table as equals the different skills and knowledge that they all have. Community engagement, really important, because it connects students to the real world outside of school. And of course, you know, the real world is a funny topic, but concept, but the real world is, you know, that world outside school where there's a whole bunch of experts and resources available to them. When we work together, SDG 17, when we work together, we are powerful. And so having that shift with our young people is a really important one as well. We do spend some time sitting down and doing community mapping and thinking about how this learning links and who they could connect with. We don't just say, off you go off to the community, bye. They actually have to sit down and think about the different groups in the community and who could help them in the community. So it's a very useful tool. I use this diagram that is based on, it's an extension of a blog that Jennifer D. Klein wrote for MEG Languages, and it's called Expanding Circles of Community. Ellen's saying, I love this one. I presented this in another conference somewhat recently, and yes, it's really great. I added in a couple of layers to this because I felt like primary school students needed a bit more scaffolding. So we have home, we have school, we have community, we have the city, we have country, we have geography, and we have global. Now, this is where that glocal comes in. So we can think about what's happening in our home and we can map what that looks like. That's how we end up with, like, you know, why does it matter that I put, you know, my recycling out? I try and cut down on the amount of waste in my home, and how that, what does that look like on a global level? That is our climate change, right? Or, you know, what does it mean to me that what I pack in my lunchbox around, you know, my culture's food? And then we end up on a global level around cultural diversity and inclusion at national level, and all the challenges that some countries have around some of those integrations and inclusion aspects as well. Okay, so it's really helpful to scaffold learning. For the littlies, I talk about me, we, and us. And that's really, really, oh, thanks, Ellen. Ellen just popped the chat, another, not this one, another link in the chat, and I will pop the one that this is based on. I'll put it in the chat as well. Awesome. Yeah, Jennifer D. Klein, if you don't know her work, check her stuff out. She's awesome. Okay, we're getting towards we've got another 5-10 minutes, and then I'll open up for sort of questions and sharing and all those things. Digital storytelling is really important. We don't just say, hey, you know, go and actually, Jennifer D. Klein was saying recently she doesn't like this idea of posters because, you know, sometimes kids are like, I made a poster. So it's really about thinking about purpose. What is the purpose? So with digital storytelling, we think with young people about what are we using, what tools are we using, and what are we using it for. We use it to educate, we use it to inform, to amplify, and to inspire. Okay, so those 4 things. So when we've designed a project, whatever that project is, so for example, Wembley Primary School, the one I was mentioning before, they did a whole food scrap system where they started collecting the food scraps. They put it in a sub pod, which is a thing that worms climb through that's under the ground in their school gardens. They did nude food lunch boxes. So the first thing they did, they was like, hey, we've got to educate people about why this is important. No one's going to take action on something if they don't understand why it's important. And how do we make that education engaging? I mean, there's so much learning in this. There's so many skills in this. Inform. How do we inform, keep parents informed, keep students informed about our projects? Yes, we can have assemblies, but, you know, what else is there? What other things could we be doing as well? And amplify, you know, how do we reach more people using digital technologies, and how do we inspire? So I'm going to take a little break and show one more video because I think student voices are always beautiful to listen to with this work. And I am going to share this little video. It's from a school that we worked with in America. They're called Spectrum, and this was empathy for endangered animals. So it's really short, it's just 1 minute. This was their project, and you'll see some digital storytelling in here. So how they educated the community about their issue. Check it out. All right. Okay, awesome. So what did you see them doing in that video? So many amazing things around digital storytelling. What did you see? What did you like? Pop it in the chat, and I'm just going to jump back into my PDF, which I think is probably going to go back to the start. So I'll just have to do a little flick through. That's okay. Yes. Oh, good. All right. Sorry, I am just finding a couple of there we go. Just jumping through. Back to where we left off. Okay, beautiful. So what did you see in that video with Spectrum? They did some amazing work with the media release. That was totally their idea, and they got a lot of news coverage actually, which was very cool. They got 3 or 4 newspapers pick up the story, and they just, really celebrated the fact that they'd done this great project. I hadn't thought about setting out a media release. That was totally from the students. So, there you go. When we come to digital storytelling content production is such a big area. It's so important. There's so many skills that come out of that as well. And also there's things like websites. There's things like, I've got several examples of student created websites with multiple tabs. They've all linked to the SDGs. I've got video, they've made videos, they've made social media content, they've put things on their school Facebook page. I even have one school where the boys wrote a rap about waste at their school using ChatGPT to help them with the lyrics, make sure it all rhymed. They made a music video, they started an Instagram channel, and they to go with their project. And that was all actually, when I visited the school, I saw it and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. It's so student driven. And their educator hadn't even seen it yet. She didn't even know it existed. It was so student driven from the beginning. And the funny thing about that was one of the boys said to me, Miss, you don't need to worry about, I know you're old and you don't like rap, so don't worry. It's what young people speak. And I said, well, that's why you decide what to do and not me, because you know what young people like and you know what they will connect to. So, there you go. We do link everything to the SDGs. We do link everything to, in the younger years, the good life goals, and think about that bigger global picture as well. Okay. So we're thinking about, some of the language in the SDGs for sure is quite complex. That's why the Good Life Goals also supports younger learners. But we do, of course, work across both. And one of the things that we say for every project, it always meets SDG 17 because it's partnerships for the goals. Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier skills. So many skills fall out of this, and they also identify the skills themselves. So inclusive leadership. We talk about inclusive leadership, not just leadership, but what is inclusive leadership? We talk about critical thinking, creativity, communication, and researching. We also talk about what are the roles of the educator, and what does the educator get out of facilitating a project? And for so many educators, they find it so rewarding, and it's something that is always evolving as well. Okay, so we've come to the end of the session. Thank you very much for still being here and joining. I would love any examples. I'll give you a couple of minutes. I would love any examples of how you're supporting student action for social or environmental justice in the chat. I know that there's lots of amazing work being done out there in schools. Julia Fliss is somebody that I follow on social media, and what she shares is absolutely amazing. And of course, this conference has so many amazing speakers as well. So feel free to pop anything in the chat before we finish up. I will just share that blog I mentioned a little bit earlier as well. And I'll just give everyone a minute in case they want to share anything. But I did also just want to say, I'll leave that up while we're sharing. If you want to just beat that, you can fill in that form. I will send you access to this course for free. It is filled with examples, videos, case studies of what change making for social and environmental justice looks like in schools. So sign up if you want to check out some of those resources. It's all free. It's all there. I will throw a couple of blogs into the chat as well. And if anyone wants to share anything before we finish up, just pop it in the chat. Any questions? I need a suggestion. Yeah, so Punja Aaron has said, I need a suggestion. There are several pens, one-time use, which simply go to waste. Making murals out of these, will this count as a sustainable project? Absolutely, because if they are not reused, they go to landfill. So there'd be so much education that you could do with that project. You could be, and if anyone is in the audience and wants to give Pooja some advice around this project as well, please do, and add into the chat as well. There's so much you could talk about, the life cycle of a pen and look at what resources it takes to produce a pen. Then you could look at why pens are potentially quite cheap and why things are so cheap in the world. And so you've got that whole things are cheap because they're made en masse in factories, and, is that right? Is that just? How much are people getting paid? And then, of course, instead of throwing things in the bin, those pens can be reused in a way. I am going to share with you, Pooja, a really fantastic artist whose work is, he uses bottle caps. Let me just see. South American bottle top artist. Let me have a look. His name is, he's Venezuelan. And I am going to pop his name in the chat for you. So he actually uses, Oscar Oliveras. And he uses bottle caps to create eco murals. I'm going to put that in the chat. Now you can check him out. His name is Oscar Oliveras. Now, one of the schools I'm working with, they are using bottle tops. They're collecting, they called their project Lids for Kids, which was very cute. They actually partnered with McDonald's, and they collected all the bottle tops from the McDonald's cafe as well as their school community. And no worries. And they are recycling bottle tops, but there was more than they could recycle. So they've decided to do a big mural just like the one that Oscar, I'm just going to share my screen because he's an amazing Venezuelan artist. If you don't know his work, everybody check it out, because he raises awareness of sustainability issues through his art, but he uses plastic and he just uses bottle tops. That's all he uses. So yeah, make something out of those amazing bottle tops. Alison says, as a light touch activity, linking data literacy to sustainability, you could take part in, some world largest lessons activities. Very cool. You're collecting and sharing student cards at events next week. Great. Yes. Awesome. So Allison's saying, please share with her. She's always wanting to share and amplify I'm just going to save your email, Allison. I'd love to share with you my my student examples of case studies. Okay, cool. Is there anything else that we would like to share, or any questions before we finish up? No. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Reach out if you have any questions. I am based in Australia, but Meg Languages does this work in the USA as well, as you've seen from the examples. And I'm always really interested to hear what people are doing to share resources. We have a Facebook page for people to share global resources on as well. But if you want to join our Oh, cool. Thanks, Ellen. She's put another one, Chris Jordan as well. Thank you so much. Yeah. So stay in contact, everyone. Thank you so much. If there's any final comments or questions, pop them in the chat, and I think we will finish up, and I will let the moderator jump back in and finish us up, Jordan. I'm just going to find that blog as well while we're waiting. Thank you, Alison, too, for your great work. And thank you, Alan and Pooja and everybody that joined us today. It's so awesome. There's so many people doing amazing work. And I love these conferences because we get to meet new friends and make new connections. So thanks, everybody, for connecting. Thanks, Charles, for joining so much. And yeah, I'm going to finish up there, and I'm just going to try and find that. Jennifer, I'm multitasking badly, sorry. Thank you, Danielle. Reach out anytime if you need help with anything. I'm here to help and support. And Ayesh, thank you so much for joining. All right, I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to just, yeah, I think we're done.